continuing on with 9.7, I'm going to be happy to let you read up on this because it is, frankly, it is a repetition with a much larger example of what we have seen previously. So I'm happy to let you go through that. What I do want to point out here is two things. Number one, there is a bit at the bottom portion of this section in the text with a pointer to a constant. Just remember that with a constant, you are not allowed to change that constant variable's value. That is the same here with its reference instead. So just as a piece of reminder, don't do that. The thing I really wanted to point out here in 9.7, in I believe this is on page 524, is this little warning box here. You can see up that way the code that we have for this. We are entering an integer. That integer is actually a function call that we're making to be able to enter the integer. And then we are going to double the value of the integer we added and then output it. Now, we do not have right here all of the code for that. The thing here to make a an alarm, an alert, a warning, that's what they called it, is if we look at the statement here, we can see cin, and then we have the indirection operator, so that comes in, and then we have the asterisk input. So what this does is, and it says so right here, is it causes the value entered to be stored not in input, but where input is pointing. So that is a fundamental difference in the way it is that we've been thinking about how to store a value in a variable. So now again, it's clearly all part of the same gestalt, right? It's all part of the same system here that we've been using, is the idea of the pointer. We are, instead of passing by value, so with a copy here, we are instead assigning the value directly to where it is that input points. So that's something to be aware of, because if we read the warning box here, that the indirection operator be used in the statement above. Without it, if we look at the way that cin works, we would store the value in input instead of the address where it happens. And the problem with that is, once we've done that, we can no longer point to that variable or the variable's address that we were using, because now we have overwritten the value that we had for that pointer, and that is potentially a colossal failure moving forward. Because remember, we wanted to use the reference, so the address for that, so that instead of passing copies, we had direct, fast, and ready access to the contents of that variable instead. Now, if we overwrite, I believe it's called input, if we overwrite input with a value, what's going to happen is, in the other places where we have relied on input to give us a map to an address, it's going to have simply a value instead, thereby breaking everything else we wanted to do with input. So you do have to be careful here. We need the asterisk input there. The greater code block you can see below here in, I think it's 19-12. You can see that used there in 9-12 and 9-11. But the asterisk there is important, because otherwise we're going to dereference. We're going to lose our ability to reference the address that we were looking for there. And that can be terminal, which nobody wants to be.